Dana Hursey is an award-winning Los Angeles-based commercial advertising photographer and Southern California native, a graduate of and frequent instructor at Art Center College of Design. Dana's broad-based knowledge has offered him the opportunity to shoot for a wide range of clients. Dana imbues a sense of vibrancy, cleanliness, and humor, whether it's lifestyle, still life, or quirky conceptual images. His work has been exhibited here and abroad. His years of experience have afforded him the privilege of serving on boards of several organizations, including serving currently as Senior Vice President of APA National. In addition to his acclaimed portraits from the 14 Days of Great Britain documentary project, Dana recently completed a compilation cookbook featuring portraits and recipes from 35 of LA's top chefs. Yum. So if you want to know where to go eat in LA, talk to Dana. So I'll pass it over to Dana and we'll introduce the others when they come up.
Thanks so much, Juliet. And thanks, Frank, for having us. This is going to be really fun. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share a little bit of work with you. It will initially be gray. Don't worry, because images will show eventually. Okay.
What are we drinking, sweetheart?
So I was going to talk a little, I'm pretty much going to share a bunch of my commercial work. Most of it's recent. I think it's all recent, partly because I kind of want to talk a little bit about finding your voice, because it's something that I actually struggled with for the bulk of my career. I would say I actually didn't find my photographic voice for decades, which kind of reveals my age, I think, unfortunately. But, you know, about 10, 11 years ago during the recession, I really connected with my retoucher of decades, and we kind of developed a look that it morphed over time. But at the time, it was really trying to kind of push an illustration component into the photography. And also I started to really develop a vibrancy, a graphicness. I mean, I've always had a graphic nature to my work, and I've always kind of leaned into vibrancy and contrast. And a combination of that with this new look just really started to resonate with me. And so part of why I wanted to talk a little bit about this is because I struggled with it for so long. A longtime friend who was a rep back in the day used to call me the executor. And it was not necessarily, she meant it as a compliment, but it wasn't necessarily a compliment, because what she was saying is that, you know, hand Dana a layout and he will execute it. He'll give you exactly what you want from that layout. But ultimately what that meant is that I wasn't necessarily injecting anything additional into it. And so once again, you know, a couple decades into my career, when I started to kind of finally find a voice and feel like I had something to say, is when I feel my work took off. I feel that my work actually started to have a consistency to it and a uniqueness. And now I'm kind of humbled and thrilled when people say, oh yeah, when I see one of your images, I know it's one of your images. Yeah, so a lot of these have been commercial clients that have come in and asked for that specific thing. The tough part about it is that it is kind of very niche. It's a very particular style. And so, you know, it's not going to be broadly used. This image and the next were both editorial pieces. These were for an article on DJs and people who are big in the rave world. And so it was an editorial article for that. But again, I love, you know, my go-to is contrast, vibrance, but also on the storytelling part, it's humor. I'm very much enjoying doing work that I consider to be a little on the retro side.
Dana, when do you know that you found your voice?
About 5 years after you find it.
Okay.
You know, it's for me, it's when I started to produce things that were consistent, and definitely were my own. These pieces, this series, this next 3 were done for the Newport Beach Film Festival. We actually shot this this was shot a month before shutdown. So it was for last year's film festival, which ultimately got canceled. And so they're going to run for this year's film festival. But I'm always kind of surprised when people come to me. I'm a little reserved in wanting to push my style on anybody, even though that's kind of what I'm known for now. So I'm always thrilled when somebody says, oh, no, we want you to go full bore and really inject your vision on a particular campaign. This and the next one, and we shot a bunch for this ad campaign for a paper product. It was actually shot the Thursday before shutdown. And then they didn't run it for almost a full year because they didn't need to advertise for these products. This was the first campaign that we shot during COVID. This was shot in May, and we had San Diego Gas and Electric come to us because with everybody having been staying at home for several months, they were starting to do home improvements, and San Diego Gas and Electric started to get an onslaught of calls of people digging on their property and hitting gas and electric lines. And so they kind of wanted to quickly put together this public safety campaign about, calling 811 before you dig someplace. And we did both these print pieces, but then the shoot was a 2-day shoot, and we did a very meticulous long shoot to do a stop motion animation, which ended up being a 15 and 30-second commercial that ran. And this is the commercial, and forgive me if the sound is a little low on this.
Sometimes it's obvious where not to dig. For everywhere else, like your yard, call 811. And we'll help you avoid hitting underground gas and electric lines. Remember, 811 before you dig. So that was supposed to be just this is a little bit of behind the scenes from some other COVID productions that we've done. But the one for 811 Dig was just supposed to be for web, but the client liked it so much that they pushed it on to broadcast. So these are some of the finished images from that BTS that you just saw.
So the way you filmed it could be used for either a medium?
It could have, yes. We didn't end up doing that, but everything was shot high res stills and then put into that stop motion animation. So yeah, it was thousands and thousands of individual frames to make that. So these were all for a pharma client.
So then when you shot that, did you know it was going to TV?
No. We thought it was simply going to be just web assets, just kind of an add-on for social. But the client ended up liking it so much that they then bought a license. They relicensed it for broadcast. Great. We just shot this in March. And I always say that COVID was not the challenging part of this particular shoot.
Were they both there on the same day?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was a 1-day shoot, and we were piggybacking on it, the commercial portion of it. And it was interesting to say the least. These next few are some images from personal series that I've done, most of them during COVID. So when we weren't able to get talent in front of the camera immediately, I started looking for other things that would cooperate with me.
And again, kind of really leaning into the graphic, vibrant look. And I think that's what, what really, Frank and I have actually talked about this. I've always been a generalist. I started my career as a generalist, and it doesn't always serve you well. But ultimately what happened is that the look that I developed turned out to be the unifying thing in my work. So whether I'm shooting people, product, whatever it is, that's kind of the thing that makes it mine. And I'm a firm believer, even though the industry may not be, I'm a firm believer. If you love being a generalist or you love shooting a variety of things, there's no reason not to do it. It's about injecting your voice into whatever it is that you're shooting.
To your point earlier on, every one of these looks like you shot it. And that's
Yeah.
George must be the happiest rep in town. Great.
And some of these, like this series of drinks that I just finished, it was, about, I had known about a food stylist for years, and we've actually almost worked together several times, and it just never happened. And so we just took the opportunity to get together, and so that I could work with her once before, we actually do a job together.
That's sort of interesting, right? You and her have been in the business forever, and you're still doing test shoots.
Oh, yeah.
How that is just beautiful. That is just beautiful.
I did a test shoot just last Friday, but finally with some people. I don't have that stuff in my presentation because it's not ready for prime time yet, but it feels good to test. I mean, and back when I was an executor and I didn't have my voice, it was really hard for me to test. I would test maybe once a year, and I'd be lucky if I did that. But now that I feel like I've got something to say finally, and so it makes testing a lot easier. Doesn't make it any cheaper, but it makes it easier. This is a whole campaign that we did for Lowe's, and again, they came to me specifically because they wanted this particular look.
And Dana, make sure that you integrate that story that you told me last week, just because that's a great little antidote. Yeah.
So Frank and I were chatting, and I was talking about the fact that we've just always got to keep marketing. And one of the things I do is I have a CRM, or a client, a database basically, but I have some software that, when I've got a good client, somebody I've worked with before, or somebody I've shown my book to, I always kind of tag them in that software to remind me to reach out to them every quarter. I'm kind of anal retentive that way. If there's something I'm very organized. But this software, which is just you can probably do this with most pieces of software. It literally reminds me, it's like, oh, you haven't talked to Bob, make sure to reach out to him, kind of thing. And I set them for every quarter. And so about a month and a half ago, I got a slew of alerts saying, hey, it's time, reach out to these people. And I'm just kind of like rolling my eyes, like, okay, here we go, I got to do these. And so I'm typing an email to these various people that I need to reach out to. And one of them was a client that I've worked with before. That pharma campaign that I just showed with the people jumping through the air, it was that agency. And so I just sent off an email because we'd shot in October. I hadn't talked to them. It's like, hey, just wanted to remind you, about, that we're here. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope the campaign that we shot is doing great. Sent that off. And it's just, I get no responses from these. I send them out. It's just a matter of staying front of mind for all these people. And so I sent one off to them. They were like in the middle of the pack. 3 minutes later, hand to God, 3 minutes later, I get a return email saying, hey, we've got this campaign that we want to shoot. Would you, do an estimate for this? And I actually just shot the job a week and a half ago, and we're in post-production now. And it was that pinging, that little poke, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, had I not sent that out, would you guys have called me in on this job, so, and it's one of those things, you just never know where the next gig is coming from. And so for me, it's a matter of staying front of mind. And the fact that I got an instant result is fantastic and horrible, because it means, oh my God, I got to keep doing this. I've got to keep reaching out.
If there's nothing else that we get from this night, it's that
Yeah.
story right there is just the essence of being a commercial photographer.
Yeah, it's always staying front of mind, because it's whoever's crossing the desk at the time that they've got a gig. I'm stopping here because this is the image that I'd entered into the APA Awards, and it was part of a campaign for fatherhood.gov, and they do this humorous campaign every couple of years to try and encourage engagement between fathers and their kids. So this is the image that I entered into the competition, and so we were actually, again, shooting this side by side with a commercial production. And even with that, we were really doing our own thing. We cast our own talent. We were using different spaces in the location. And we actually shot on a separate day. But this was all for that campaign. And this was running nationwide. It was on bus benches and some billboards and stuff. And I have a little behind the scenes of that too.
Great. Yeah. Dana, can you just speak a little bit to how you, when you're thinking of entering a competition, how many images, campaigns, single images, what's your thought process, just to give people insight on that end?
Well, I have to say, first part of my career, I didn't do awards at all. And I'm not sure, I've been doing them for a long time now, but for me, obviously it's the new work, whatever I've done recently, I'm trying to enter. And my thought process is, one more time, the awards, the competitions for me are not about winning prizes. It's PR. It's getting my work in front of the judges. It's getting my work out there where more people are going to see it. And so even if I don't win, I'm entering my latest work, obviously the stuff that I think is the best and stuff that I want to do, so that people see it. Sometimes I'll do, if I've shot something that's very cohesive in a campaign, I'll enter it as a campaign if the competition allows you to do that. Some of them are single image only. But I really do try, the other strange thing that I've experienced, which I don't know if other people experience this, there are certain award or competitions that are a good fit for me. Some of them are not. And, regardless of how many times I enter, I'll never be acknowledged in any way, shape, or form. That being said, this is the first time I've ever won an APA award. So again, you never know. So, but yeah, I try and enter, the bulk, not the bulk of them. There's at least 8 to 10 that I enter every year. And it's just, what's my recent work, if it's a good fit. And I feel this is the end of the commercial stuff. And I'm probably coming up on my time here. So it's always good to end on animal shots, because then everybody goes, oh, kind of win the room. So I've got a couple projects. I can do we want to do Q&A, or should I blast through a couple real quick?
Just to go through quick.
Yeah.
So this is the Cart for a Cause cookbook that Juliet mentioned, where we shot 35 of LA's top chefs for a charity cookbook for Meals on Wheels. So we shot the portrait of the chef, their branding, and then the recipe that they contributed to the book. So not all 35. And then the other project that she mentioned was a 14 Days in Great Britain, which is getting a little long in the tooth, but I keep it because the producer of this documentary project is talking about picking it up again. But what we did here is we went across Great Britain. We did 14 cities in 14 days, from the Isles of Northern Scotland all the way down to London. And in this project, I was the environmental photographer. There was also a studio photographer doing a very Irving Penn white seamless kind of portraits. And then there was a video element to it, and that all got woven into a motion picture documentary. But across the 14 days, I shot over 650 portraits of people just off the street. And so this was something that was way outside my wheelhouse. I was not comfortable on this trip at all. When I got done with the trip, I was exhausted, and I said, I will never do anything like that ever again in my life. And then a year later, the producer called and said, hey, we're thinking about doing Russia. I said, I'm on board. It didn't happen, but I would actually do this again in a heartbeat, even though it was a grueling project and actually quite emotional.
Great. And this ends up being a book, Dana?
Yeah, it was a book, but it was also the more important thing is it was a 90-minute documentary. So these were woven into video interviews that they did with a lot of the same people that we photographed.
Okay. Great. Wow, terrific. All right. If anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat room, or just open up everyone's mic, and if anyone has any questions, that'd be great. But that all that is. So will that project keep on coming back, Dana? Do you know? You have a feel?
I don't know. I spoke to the producer in August, and he said he was getting ready to pick it back up again. But I have not heard from him since. So I do not know, but I got some great imagery from it. So I'm thrilled.
So here's a good question. Is it hard to maintain your voice when working commercial gigs?
Strangely, I don't think so. I tend to project that, yes, it would be. But I am always surprised when the clients are saying, no, we want you, that's why we came to you. We saw your work. That's what we want injected into this. And again, when I was young, I was always very intimidated. It's like, no, I just need to produce what they want, not realizing they're coming to me because they want your input in the process.
Yeah, and how does that relate to competition? Being that everybody's a photographer, right? I mean, you get now, you're in this niche that I want the way Dana shoots. It helps you, right? I mean, by having that clear vision.
It does. It absolutely does. At the same time, again, I look at it, and it is kind of so niche that sometimes, there's not enough of those jobs out there. I think that's my mentality.
Yeah.
That may not actually be true. But I think on a certain level, you don't want to create something so tight that there's no appeal to, you're going to have one or two clients a year. So, that's where, for me, being a generalist helps me, because maybe there isn't a food campaign, but there's a lifestyle campaign or a pharma campaign, where my style, my look can lend itself to different marketplaces.
Mm. And who shot the making of the videos? The behind the scenes.
Let's see, I'm trying to remember. I hired crews for all of those. So I've got my kind of go-to video guys that when we have a job and I think it's going to be a good make for good BTS, I'll hire a crew out of pocket and have them just film the entire thing.
That's with client approval.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah, we always check with them first and just say, hey, we want to do BTS. Are you guys okay with this? And
Yeah,
and
usually they're fine.
yeah.
Great. Here's another question. I'm curious if during the executor period, if he was shooting any personal work as well. This is often where one style or look comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very valid and true. And I wasn't doing enough of it. I wasn't doing enough personal work. Like I said, when I was being an executor, it would be pulling teeth for me to test once a year. And my stuff ended up just looking back on it, very clean, very graphic, but no voice. And and I will say for me, from my experience, and you know what, everybody comes to this on a different path. Everybody gets to where they're at in a completely different way, which is something that's so beautiful about this profession. The way I came to it, it was the recession that drove me. That's what helped me find my voice. It was like desperation. I'm sitting there with my retoucher going, what can we do? What can we do? Here's some imagery. How can we make this different? And it was working through that process with her that kind of, popped the lid on it.
It's interesting. Louisa Curtis is probably the smartest woman on the planet. And she wrote, now his work looks like it's personal. And that really crystallizes everything.
Yeah.
And that's why she is the smartest woman.
Thank you. Yes.
But that is really a great, great point. It really is. I mean, and that's what you and I discussed last week, right? It's your style. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was terrific. I mean, Juliet, I jumped in there and asked a lot of things, so I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Right. Okay. Last question. Do you push your students to find their voice while in school?
Yeah. Yep. And for me, my mantra when I'm talking to students or anybody that's asking advice is you absolutely, and because this is a life lesson I learned, and I learned it the hard way, you have to shoot the stuff you love. You have to shoot what you're passionate about. If you try and do what you think the market wants, your work is going to look boring like the first half of my career. You've got to shoot what you're passionate about, because that's the only way that voice comes out, I think.
Great. Well, Dana, thank you so much. That was really
thank you.
Great. Yeah, the insight is great. I think we all need to hear that as senior people and younger people and starting out people. To hear it again and again, it never grows old because it's so stinking true.
Yeah.
Stinking true. So
thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for doing that very, very much.